And welcome back to Guttter Boys, episode 5.5, because we lost the episode we recorded earlier in the week. This is Cam on that sick Rage Against the Machine beatbox in the background. We got JB. What's up, man?
What's up?
What have you been up to, man?
Just, fucking chilling, hitting that Chiba, legalize it. No, I've just been working on some stuff to get ready for C2E2, which is this coming up this weekend. Next weekend. Right now, it's this weekend, which is March 16th. Emerald City's going on right now, which is a 4-day event, and that's fucking crazy, right? 4-day event cons. That seems like a bit much.
Is it always 4 days?
I think it's a recent thing in the last couple of years. That's definitely kind of a thing that we're seeing. Like, it's a trend. More cons are doing 4-day events, and that's dumb. Anyway, so just getting ready with that. As you already know, we are sliding into SPX. We got to play the Wolfpack theme.
Back-to-back lottery winners, baby.
Yeah, that's going to be good. We're going to have the whole Gutter Gang crew there, right? Do that roll call, baby.
Yeah,
Come on.
It'll be me, you. We've got Dylan, aka Drug Dogs, the guy that just sold out a T-shirt for Virtual Pros. So I guess we're gonna let him foot the bill for the entire trip.
Shout out to Rich Mike now.
Definitely. Shout out to those guys again. We've also got Blake coming with us as normal. Patrick Ian Rooks will be there, and I should have asked him how to pronounce his last name.
We still don't know how to do that, do we?
Time we... Yeah, but Nick Kukwe, I got to figure out how to pronounce that, Nick, so I'm going to DM you and figure that out, because, as it gets closer...
Listeners, if you know how to say his last name, email us at gutterboyspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, we need some emails because, we want to see how you guys feel about this stuff. Feel free to disagree with us, too. We're going to try to dunk on you as much as possible, but, any kind of thought-provoking email would be nice. So, once again, that's gutterboyspodcast@gmail.com. What are you working on for C2E2? What are you going to have? Is that Ashcan still coming out?
Yeah, the Ashcan, I am actually going to be getting that today in the mail, according to this United Postal Service tracking number.
Okay.
Shout out to all the men and women out there working at the United States Postal Office. And I don't know. It's a shitty job.
Yeah.
It sucks. I have friends that work there, and seems like it's not easy. So, and I understand, that's like a common complaint, right? Especially with people who do self-publishing, right? They have to go to the post office, their local neighborhood post office, and like deal with the post office on a pretty regular basis.
Fucking hate that shit.
Yeah. And one of the major complaints is, they were rude, or, they didn't know what they were doing. It's just like, look, if that was me on the other side of that, I would have just spit on your face. Like, let's be honest. All of us would. Like, that job sucks.
I think the only part that would be like nice about that is maybe being a carrier. Like, if it was nice outside and you had like a really cool little neighborhood to walk through, that wouldn't be that bad. Maybe it would be, but you're by yourself walking around. Couldn't be that bad.
Yeah, and again, that definitely depends on where you're living and what time of the year it is.
Right. No, in the winter. I mean, my dad actually works for FedEx, like delivering packages now. And yeah, he fucking hates it during the winter because, they got to get stuff out. And
yeah, but he's not even on foot.
No, he has a van, and then he has to like take shit to people's houses.
Sure.
So, and like drop it off. So,
right.
But yeah, no, it's not like he's walking blocks and stopping at every house. That would be pretty tedious. You couldn't even really, I guess, get your heart rate up at that point because it's like 3 steps later.
I mean, kind of. You're going pretty briskly. You're going at a rate. I mean, I don't know. The guy that used to be my back when I lived in a different part of Pilsen, like no joke, like maybe 2.5 blocks in the other direction.
Okay.
My postal service guy that would do my block was like one of the coolest fucking guys. We would always just like talk and hang out and chill, and just like genuinely one of the nicest people that you could just like randomly meet on the street. And the fact that I got to see him days out of the week was really cool. So I don't know. What I'm saying is like get to know your local postal worker, get to know the person that runs your block, and if you go to the postal service office, I don't know, try not being a dickhead. It'll do wonders for you. And also, the next time you go in there, because you absolutely will have to go back in there at some point, they'll actually treat you nicely. It's crazy. It's this whole concept where if you give someone respect, they actually give it back in return. Isn't that a wild concept?
I don't know, man. I don't respect anybody.
That's true. Me neither.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I respect everybody. But talking about mailing shit out, this is actually pretty good. Do you have a disclaimer on your web store on like something like please allow X amount of time for shipping? Do you put that on your web store?
Usually it depends. If it's like a pre-order kind of situation and people are paying in advance, then yes. And I'll add more time to it than I would likely receive it, just to be on the safe side.
So for non-pre-order items, do you have like a disclaimer at all?
No, because if you don't understand how the postal service works and you don't understand what, priority package shipping is, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, like, okay, so one of my biggest gripes, is when someone orders something and it's literally the next day and they're like, hey, did this ship out yet? And it's like, motherfucker, I have a job and a real life too. But they don't know that. And I'm happy they bought my books. But I put a disclaimer on my site that's like, please allow 1 to 2 weeks to ship, because I hate going to the post office and just shipping out like one thing. I like to let orders kind of pile up. And I'm not even getting like a super amount of orders. If a book's not new, it's just kind of random what comes in, what comes out. But I put a little disclaimer on there because at least if somebody emails me, I'm like, well, on the site, it says, please allow 1 to 2 weeks to fulfill orders. And that's just because sometimes I get lazy. Sometimes I want to,
It's smart. That's a smart idea. I mean, I'm with my day job, since I work in NBC Tower, they got like a whole, what are words? They have like a whole area, like a facility just handling mail. So I can just drop off all my packages for that, five times out of the week. I can just drop it off into the little slot thing, and then it's fine. So I don't really, nowadays, I don't even go to the local post office anymore. I mean, I used to. I had to go pretty often, but nowadays I rarely go, just because I can just drop it off before I clock into work, and it's super convenient for me.
Also, just a little tip for the post office. If you ship media mail, sometimes I'll ship media mail, because it's supposed to take like 7 days. Usually it's a lot quicker than that. But if you make comics and you tell them it's media mail, because they asked now at the post office what you're shipping, and I fucked up one time and I said, oh, it's a comic book. And they were like, well, this is technically a periodical because comics come out on a monthly schedule. So you can't ship it media because it's a monthly periodical document. And I was like, well, my comics come out once or twice a year. Can I please ship media mail? And they were like, no, first class or priority only.
That's a really weird way to interpret an entire medium based on like a couple of companies and how they distribute it.
Right. So now what I do is when they ask me what it is, I've wisened up if I'm shipping media. And I'm like, oh, they're picture books for children.
Because I've always said books.
Okay, gotcha. Books, yeah.
But at the same time, I never really use media mail anymore because it's a waste of time. And
the only time I do media now is when I first put a book out, because usually that's when like I get a lot of orders in the first week or two of it being out, and just to kind of save myself shipping, I always go media. It kind of sucks, but usually if it's like orders that just trickle in, I'm going first class for you. 2 to 3 days.
I always do first class, and I always charge for first class. So if you want to play that, if you want to pay for priority, fine by me. Go ahead and do it, and I'll ship it priority. But like first class default, that's how much I'm going to put in.
I always fuck up on how much, because I use big cartels, so it asks how much you want for shipping, and I'm like, $3. And then like I get to the post office and it's like $3.57 to ship. So I'm like, fuck. And I'm always screwing myself over when it comes to charging on shipping.
You got to get on that Shopify. It automatically calculates it for you using your Stamps account. Yeah.
Okay. I just don't I've thought about getting a Stamps account, but I only have volume a couple times a year when a book comes out.
Well, I mean, I have a Stamps account via the ShipStation account that I have. And that makes more sense for me only because I'm shipping. I mean, I don't even ship my own products that much anymore. And when I do, it's usually to friends and family and stuff. If anything, it helps me save some money on when I need to ship stuff just in general, because I still get that discount.
Right.
So,
are you sending hardware to your family and your comics?
No, because the hardware stuff's all handled by Joe. I don't really handle fulfillment most of the time. I don't do that.
Gotcha. It'd be really cool if your parents were just decked out in Shibata shirts. Do they have them?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, my dad and my mom would have no idea what to do with that. I mean, they would probably wear it, but I mean, they got clothes. I don't
You would just come home and they would greet you at the airport, in your Shibata shirts. That would be a very sweet and heartwarming image to come home to, right?
Yeah, fuck that. I don't want that. I'm not all about that shit. No.
Oh shit! All right, I'm just fucking with
dude,
you.
I'm a cold ass fucking dude, man. Anyway.
Speaking of cold, it's cold in Chicago, and that's where you live.
It's starting to warm up, but
yeah, it's starting to warm up here too. But I was trying to segue into our next segment on the show, which was
slap that shit right out of the air.
You just
get
block
that shit. This is my house.
So one thing we want to talk about is, JB lives there in Chicago, and I live here in Louisville, and we're going to kind of just talk about the differences between living in a town that is really renowned for the cartoonists that live there in Chicago, and then in Louisville, there's hardly a scene at all. So kind of just talk about the differences between making art or comics, in different scenes, like a smaller town versus a bigger city. So you moved to Chicago, 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years? How long have you been there?
A little over 6 years now.
6 years, yeah. Okay. And you moved there from Florida. And were you making comics like before you came to Chicago, or did you start while you were in Chicago?
I started in Chicago. I actually, the only time I was actually making a comic in Florida was when I was in probably elementary school for like a summer art course that I took. It was like part of like some program in conjunction with the art museum and the library there. Because I was a real dork and just like fucking hung out at the library all the time. So, yeah.
Did your library at least stock comics?
I actually don't remember, because when I was, the only stuff I was actively reading and checking out was just like books on like fucking like ghosts and dinosaurs and cryptozoology stuff, because I was a weirdo. So that's all I fucking read when I was hanging out at the library. Well, that and like history stuff, but yeah, mostly it was stuff like that, like, and it would be the same books too about dinosaurs. There's only so much you can learn about, fucking Archaeopteryx until you're just like, yeah, I kind of already know this. Okay.
Do you think dinosaurs have feathers or scales?
Do I think?
Yeah, what do you think? Because
my opinion.
Well, because like the Jurassic Park dinosaur looks like a giant lizard, but a lot of studies now are saying that dinosaurs were just giant birds and they had feathers all over them. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, scientists already knew that when Jurassic Park was made.
Well, I like to believe that a T-Rex looks like a giant lizard thing, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's like fossil evidence that a T-Rex had feathers, like down feathers. They weren't completely covered head to toe in them, but they did have like these like weird. Why are we talking about this anyway? Back to being in a city. We can do dinosaur chat in my other podcast
on our Patreon.
Dinosaur chats. Yeah.
Patreon content. Steering it back on course.
I only started doing comics in Chicago, and it was actually about 3 years living in the city that I actually started doing it. I think I kind of touched on that in a previous episode, maybe. Mm-hmm. This local guy found me on a toy forum.
Yep.
And he made toys. Yeah, I think I talked about that. I don't know if it was in the episode that we lost.
It may have been, because I think it was actually, because we were talking about your first time at C2E2. So yeah, let's tell that story. Let's do the John Cena thing where he rewinds what he said.
So C2E2 was my first convention that I ever tabled at, and I had no idea what was in store for me at an event like this. So I basically had to make a comic and some zines in about a month and a half time to prepare, because the guy Ben Spencer, by the way, he goes under the tag Galaxor, so check out his toys. But he kind of last minute was just like, hey, you want to be in my booth and table? And I was like, yeah, cool. What am I going to do? And he's just like, I don't know, you can sell like your stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't have any stuff, so I guess I should make stuff. And so I started making zines and comics. and buttons. I actually started making buttons and got them produced, luckily, through a local company here in Chicago, Busy Beaver. Shout out. I better get paid for that fucking plug.
You know what's crazy is like they've been around for quite a while, right? Busy Beaver?
Yeah. Yeah,
because I remember like when we were like young punk kids, like 10 years, I guess 15 years ago, they were a company and some bands that I knew went through them. That's crazy. Cool.
Yeah, they're definitely kind of a mainstay. And they've grown quite a bit in the last couple of years. So anyway, yeah. So with C2E2, that kind of got me into the whole mode of tabling. And we were in kind of this other area that wasn't exactly Artist Alley. It was more kind of in the area where all the designer toys and art galleries were. So it was a little different. Like the traffic was slightly different in terms of who was going there. And then I think after like the second or third year, I tried my hand at being an Artist Alley, and I tabled with a friend of the show and also music producer for all the music that you hear in this podcast, Buster Moody. And that was a really interesting experience because like it was very, very different. And I actually sold quite a bit more, like actual comics and commissions and stuff like that, because people knew to look for that stuff in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was really cool. And I got to meet a lot of creators and a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise. Like the first person at that first year, C2E2, the first person I met was Alexis Zirit. And you know, I've known him ever since then. He's been a really solid kind of source of advice and assistance about a lot of stuff, and so yeah, I don't know, it was, you know, we kind of touched on this before, you don't really need to live in a major city anymore to do anything nowadays, because you can network so much online, and your online presence can really carry you quite a bit, especially if you have enough of a following, just in terms of like, you know, just eyes on your stuff. And just, you know, interacting with people. I don't know about you, Kim. I know we share this experience where there are people like you have online friends that you've known for like 10 years plus that are just people that you know online. You've never actually hung out with them in like real life, right? Like y'all are just jacked.
Yeah, definitely.
Y'all are just jacked into the Matrix, and you're just friends that way.
Right, yeah, tons of people. I mean, you might meet them at a show, but it's like in passing real quick. But yeah, most people that I'm friends with online, you're right, they're just online only friends.
Yeah, and I mean, that, of course, that's something that is only recent because of the internet, but it's, well, actually, now I think about it. Anyway.
It's what our parents told us to stay away from.
Yes.
Is what we do now.
Is exactly what we do now, right, yeah. No, that's true, that is true. But at the same time, there is something to be said about being in a city or being in an environment where there is a lot of creative minds just constantly around. So that like if you go to certain events or participate in certain events, and that's another thing too, having access to those types of events. Like you, being from Lakeland, Florida, I can tell you right now, none of that shit's going on in Lakeland. Like Aaron, my buddy Aaron, who actually was the instructor at the time when I was in like elementary or middle school. So I've known him for quite a long time now at this point, and he'd just gotten out of high school at that point. But you know, he's a pretty, I would say, established artist at this point, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, in Central Florida alone, now I'm not even counting the whole state, just Central Florida alone, there's like nothing there for him. Like he has no one really to like communicate with on a daily basis in person, or hang out with in person, or like draw with in person, or share ideas, or, you know, do types like he'll do signings at the comic shops there, but like that's few and far between. And then that's just him doing it, you know, like there's no one else there kind of doing that with him. So I think, yeah, a lot can be said of just being in the same space with other creative minds and being able to bounce off ideas in real time. And you can kind of do that online. You can, you know, like I know a lot of creators that or a lot of artists that are doing work via like Skype or FaceTime and stuff like that, and they'll just like chat while they're working, and it's like that's about the closest you can get, right, to that experience if you don't have that around you all the time, or if you're not in a major city or a place or a hub where, you know, you be able to be social in that type of way. And also you don't get to fucking like meet new people that you otherwise probably wouldn't know about until 3, 4, 5, 10 years after the fact, just because they hadn't got to that point in terms of like getting their name out and getting a presence online and all that shit. Like, I know we talked about this before, but like Yewan is a perfect example of this. They're somebody that I met from like Zine Fests, and Zine Fests to me are like absolutely fucking essential. Like, that's a huge thing. If you live in a city, go to a Zine Fest if there is a Zine Fest in you. And I think now they're becoming a little more widespread, where you don't have to live in a major city to have access to a Zine Fest, or at least one that's nearby, right? So if you get the opportunity to, I would recommend checking out as many Zine Fests as you can, meet as many people as you can, and also support the work, because there's a lot of good stuff out there that you won't really find anywhere else, especially not at some other comic convention like Wizard or some shit like that. Like, it's just not going to be there. But yeah, Yewan was one of those people that I met and got to see their work develop. And even at the time when I first met them, their work stood out. And now, fast forward like 3 years later, and I see their work not necessarily changing, but developing, right? And like kind of progressing in this really interesting way. And it's like, I don't know how to put this. It's not like one of those like corny things where it's just like, you feel like you are like have some sort of ownership or entitlement to it, but it's kind of like there's a sense of pride in seeing an artist that you saw potential in, or knew that they were going to be going somewhere with their work because it was already going in that place, and then seeing it develop and seeing them grow. And that's just, it's really satisfying. And it's good to know that artists like that are still popping up. And that, a lot of that also is because SCIC is here, and Yewan attended SCIC.
Well, and also, you just want to root for the team.
Exactly.
At this
absolutely,
point,
absolutely.
You want to root for the home team, everybody that you have faith in. And Yewan's work is incredible. They're one of my favorite artists just to look at. Like, every time they post something new, I'm just like floored. I'm really bad. Like, I know you can share people's work through stories, and I feel like such like a mark, because every time Yewan posts something, I usually like post it in my story, like share the post so other people can see it, just because it resonates that much to me. I just really love almost everything about their work right now. And then I got that book from them at last year's Chicago Zine Fest, and like, it's something that I want to do, like, because there's comics in there, but then there's just like random design elements that don't necessarily, I don't want to say they don't have a place, but in a way, like, when I think about a book, I think about it as like laying it out, and you can tell that there's definitely that thought process there. But I feel like Yewan takes risks with their stuff, and you'll just have a photo, you'll have like random photo collages, followed by a comic, and it's all printed in this beautiful, with Riso, and it's just, I can't put it over enough.
Absolutely. Man. And I think a major reason why that is because I consider them, and I talked about this before, I consider them an artist first who happens to make comics, right? Like, they're not necessarily a comic artist in sort of the traditional sense. I see them as somebody who's willing to take the comic medium and sees the potential that's in comics and really kind of do their thing with it, right? I mean, that's something I see that, and I'm like so fucking jealous. Like, that's what I want to do with comics.
Yeah, I think that's kind of exactly what you're saying there. That's kind of what I meant, where like, I'll look at their books, and it's like things that I wouldn't think about, or I don't have the guts to even try to do.
Yeah. And I mean,
and
a lot of that is because Chicago also has a pretty rich tradition of like alternative experimental comics. So and that's another thing too, is like being in an environment like that really does go a pretty long way. It's one thing to just see it online and passing, and another thing entirely where you're just like constantly surrounded by it. Yeah.
And that's where I'm at, on the flip side of that. You're talking about how it's almost a product of its environment. Here in Kentucky, there's not a comic scene at all, really. I mean, there's Blake, Dylan, and I. That's like our crew. Dylan and I live in Louisville, and then Blake lives, south in Bowling Green. But besides that, Ben Sears is, making waves, and I think that he makes really good work.
Shout out to Ben.
And, he's in Louisville.
Yeah, I know for a fact he does not listen to this.
Yeah, I'm sure. But Good guy, a really good cartoonist. I love running into Bennett shows, so I really like his work. But, besides that, you don't really have many people creating comics here. Don Rosa lives here, the guy who drew all that Donald Duck stuff back in the day, but, he doesn't do anything
I have a funny story
for the
about
scene. He just lives here.
I'll tell it on that another time.
Okay, well, if you want to tell it,
it's fine. It's nothing like super major or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
No hot news. Okay. Well, but no, so it really is just kind of a thing where we don't really ask for like editorial feedback, but we don't really see each other that often. So we just have a group text and we'll send like what we're working on. And usually we're like pretty supportive to one another and like, oh man, looks sick, and find ways to compliment it. But besides that, in a way, I think that works to my advantage because I make comics in a way that like I just kind of, I've said it before, but I just make whatever I feel like making at that moment. And I think I don't have any kind of, I don't want to say competition, but I guess it is competition, but it's like healthy, like there's not really much to drive you around here. Like I would guess in Chicago, there's not, there's no real way to be a product of your environment. So in a way, the isolated, area of Kentucky when it comes to comics, in a way, I kind of like that because I feel like I don't have any kind of pressure to like meet a standard of what's going on around me.
Yeah.
But also like it really sucks because like, I don't think I would like to go to a drink and draw. I've never been to a drink and draw, but if one of those, but the fact that you have them is, I think it's cool that like, if that's for you, I think it's cool that you have a place to go where you can, meet with like-minded individuals once a week and also, just draw little comics. But here, if you try to do a drink and draw, people will be like, what the fuck is that? So I wouldn't go if they existed, but the thought of those happening in Louisville is just like out of this world. It would never happen. So there's just like no community at all.
Yeah. I think there are definitely pros and cons to it. And I've definitely experienced the con end before. Because being in Florida, like I said, it is absolutely a fucking dead zone still. For like artists that want to do really anything creative. Yeah, I don't know, man. You can still, I think really the biggest thing that can be said is the fact that now in this day and age with the technology we have and the internet and whatnot, is that you can do way more than what you could before.
Oh yeah, definitely.
While living in a small city or town. But still, there are going to be things that you just can't get to unless you actually live in a city like that.
Right. Yeah.
But I still think it opens up more opportunities than what people had in the past. So,
And I think, that's one of those things that, even like, I guess I graduated high school at this point fucking 12 years ago. So, and I remember thinking I had to move to a big city at that point because I wanted to do art of some kind, whether it was making music or movies or, comics. Actually, at that time, I wasn't even thinking about comics at all, just to be honest. But I thought that I had to move somewhere, a more metropolitan area than Kentucky. But now that just shows how much technology has grown even in that little amount of time. I don't feel an obligation to move to a bigger city. And actually, I don't really think that I would. I mean, it would really be cool to see people that are grinding it out, on a regular basis, but it's just so cheap to live here. And, I'm able to do this with you, once a week. So that's almost like in a way of connecting with somebody in the scene. And, I don't know. I don't think I would do it now, but 12 years ago, I felt it was a necessity. So kind of just adding and reinforcing your point that the internet does really just make it so much easier as far as being a creator.
Yeah. Right. Now, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like how you can view college now. It's like not really necessary to get a college degree, but it'll help.
Right,
it will help,
right.
But yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, no. So, I wouldn't move, but, if I did move, I would move to Chicago. I've been wanting to move there for 12 years. That's like the only place that I would consider moving when it came to a bigger city. So you guys have a great scene with a lot of history there when it comes to comics as well, like tons of history.
Yes. A lot. Yeah, exactly. Touching back on that, there's a really good exhibit right now going on. I don't even think it's still going on, but it was going on. I missed it. I'm an idiot. I don't really leave my apartment. That's another thing. It's like, I talk all this shit about moving to a big city and how good it can do for you, but also like I rarely leave my apartment now other than for my day job.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, man. And maybe when the winter ends, we'll start getting out more.
Maybe even then I'm probably like, it's too fucking hot. I'm just going to stay and not even deal with this. But Who cares? I don't know. I mean, don't do comics. That's really what we're getting at. Going back to the history thing, it's like, we have Ware and Klaus and right now we have a lot of contemporary people that are doing some really interesting stuff.
Nick I don't know if I'm pronouncing the last name right. Nick Dernazzo, the guy who did Sabrina, is he in Chicago? I want to say so.
Maybe. I have no idea.
Incredible.
Actually.
I want to say he was from Chicago. Maybe. I don't know. Sorry, go ahead though.
He could be an Illinois person and not necessarily in Chicago.
Right.
That could be it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, and there's also, we also, outside of the small press stuff, we also have a lot of like, Marvel, DC, Big Two, whatever, people in Chicago as well. So yeah, I mean, you got, it's all kind of across the board. Whatever you're into, it's going to be there.
I saw an ad. I was in, I don't even know what area I was in. I was in an Airbnb that was right next to a coffee shop called like Black Matter or something like that. It's like and they were like selling like black metal coffee blends.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter, yeah. So I was in an Airbnb next to one of those. So I don't know if that detects where I'm at in Chicago, but down the street was a fucking like, it had this like giant mural of like, I don't know if it was Batman, but it was definitely like Marvel and DC heroes, and it was like comic school. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And it was like a little sign in a window that was like, enroll for X amount of week classes or whatever. Yeah.
That sounds like a big old waste of money.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I can't tell you what. I haven't seen anything like that.
Dude, talking about waste of money, like the Center for Cartoon Studies, like, I mean, there's so much talent that comes out of that place and goes to that place. But I looked at their tuition and it is ridiculous high, like to the point where it's like, you guys know already based off of the people that you bring in to like be a teacher for a semester how much of a sham comics are, and you still have the audacity to ask for more than $15,000 to teach someone how to make comics. Like, and that's kind of rooted in independent small publishing. Like, it's the greatest work of all time. Like, have you heard of that place?
Yeah.
CCS?
I have. I mean, the same could be said for any private art school, to be honest with you.
Well, sure, but I kind of just feel like, I don't know, man. Like, if you go to an art school, you're right. But, like, the people behind the Center for Cartoon Studies, they know this shit's a scam. Like, art schools are usually more, like, broad, but this is, like, a super specialized, place that I guess you could argue would be, like, an indie comics, like, factory that are just putting people in debt that they'll never make back on their career.
Yeah.
But I guess that's school anyways, I guess, Yeah,
so. I was going to say, that's just art school in general.
Right.
You just described the same scenario that pretty much anybody that walks out with a studio art degree of any kind is going to run into. Like, your options at that point are go to grad school, get a day job and continue your art while trying to peddle your stuff at galleries and trying to get representation, or continue the academic route, right? Kind of do like apply for different grants and shit like that.
Right.
So
right.
I don't know. It's all a racket. It's all a fucking racket.
Yeah, and I'm not hating on the Center for Cartoon Studies. I would love to go there, but actually, I'm on their site right now. Tuition is $23,000 a year.
That's actually cheaper than most art schools, though.
Yeah, but fuck, man. Like, I learned everything about comics by just doing it. And if somebody asked me to pay $23,000 to learn what I already know, not saying that I'm perfect, I could definitely learn more. But that's a lot of money, man. I know Frank Santoro runs like a cheaper comic school. You just got to live in his house for 12 weeks.
Live in my house. I will teach you comics.
I ran into him.
I don't even know what he sounds like.
Well, I ran into him at CXC, Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, and he gave me a business card, and he was like, yeah, man. He was like, if you ever want to come, he was like, I asked for like, I think it was like something like $2,000 or $3,000. He was like, I asked for $2,000 or $3,000. He was like, but all you got to do is just give me $100 down, and then you could pay me back as you see fit.
Sounds like wrestling school. Like such a grift. Like a clearly this. Oh man, that's great.
Yeah, he was.
Don't worry, brother. Just sneak me a couple hundred here, and then we'll take care of you.
Yeah, and
we got you, brother.
We'll just go and make these Xerox comics, and you'll sell them and get it to me down the road. But no, I mean, he was nice though when I met him, and before I walked away from the table, even though I had driven like 4 hours to this con because I just wanted to go, he was like, he gave me a newsprint comic that was like a newspaper, and he goes, here, this is for your train ride home. And I'm like, I don't even think we have trains in Ohio. We definitely don't have them in Kentucky, but yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny. After telling me that I can give him $100 to come live at his house for 12 weeks and make comics. I think M.S. Harkness went to the Santoro School. I want to say I remember him posting that they were there.
Oh yeah, I think so actually. Yeah.
So we need to ask about that next time I see him.
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot of shit about art schools, but I mean, obviously, with something that specific, there's kind of some good intention there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
You could probably learn quite a bit from that program, but also it's optional. You don't have to.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
You just do what you got to do.
I say don't go to any school ever. It's a racket. It's a scam. Don't get yourself enslaved to student loan debt.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Fuck the system.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of fucking the system, we got to take a quick break. So when we come back from the break, we're going to touch on a specific conundrum within the comic industry that I think needs to be addressed a little more. And that's the weird fixation on comic and TV adaptations and why I think that's fucking stupid. So, we'll get back to that here shortly with a word from our quote-unquote sponsors. All right.
We'll be right back. Now, back to our program.
And let's go back to the show. Welcome back. You're listening to the Guttter Boys podcast. All right. Okay, we're back. And we're going to go ahead now and talk about comic book movies and TV shows. Everybody loves them. People can't get enough of them. They are the talk of the town. They're a huge booming industry. People are making hand over fist, just cranking out those IPs, right? What's your favorite comic book adaptation? Well, frankly, I don't care. I mean that it's fine if you like that stuff. I'm not against people liking that stuff. That's whatever. That's fine. But what my main concern is certain comic people, certain writers, wink, nudge, nudge, that seem to think that the pinnacle of making it in comics is getting your IP sold and adapted. And I think that's fucking insane. That's such a low fucking bar. And also just actively discredits the medium. Right? Am I alone in this? In thinking this?
I think you bring up valid points, but, kind of like last episode, like, I'm not going to hate on anybody getting money. So, I mean, I think a prime example of this would be like Frank Miller. I do this weird thing where I just like Google celebrities' net worth. And a lot of the times my mind is blown by how much people have.
That is so weird.
Well, it's like I'll be watching TV or like reading news at work.
Yeah.
And I'll hear about like, whatever random celebrity. Because like I pull up like CNN's website and it has like entertainment news. And I look at that shit too. So I'll be like, oh, I wonder what Natalie Portman's worth. And, you'll look it up and it'll be like, oh, Natalie Portman is an American actress that's worth $72 million. Well, I looked up Frank Miller and, he was worth like quite a bit. Like, I want to say $30 million. And you got to think about it. Like, yes, he was making comics and he's getting a fat residual or not residual. What do they call those checks? Royalty checks from like DC and Marvel. But that guy's paper came from like the 300 movie and then like the Sin City movie because he was like producing it, writing it. And I mean,
he might have gotten something for Batman Begins, I feel like.
Maybe, yeah, because the year one thing, he's worth $45 million. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. But the majority of that money didn't come from comics. So
right, no, absolutely.
I don't want to hate. Yeah, so it's like I don't want to hate on anybody getting money. Me personally, like I think the greatest achievement that you could probably get in comics, I mean, I guess it would have to be like an Eisner Award, right? I mean, that's like the comic Grammys. and they do kind of nod in the direction of alternative independent creators sometimes. You know, like they're fair about it. They're not always winning, but I think that's like the pinnacle of comics. Because I mean, you can make great work all you want, and you can sell well and make money, and that's going to be awesome. But I mean, I guess as far as being recognized, it'd be an award. But if you're a creator, in my opinion, and you want to turn your stuff into movies and whatnot, go for it, get that money. But it does kind of discredit the medium, like you said, you know, because the majority of the time people aren't running out and getting the comics that those adaptations are based on. So it doesn't really help our business any, but I guess it helps that creator. So I'm kind of on the fence about that, but I hear where you're coming from. Like, I don't make comics with the intention of getting them sold into a movie. I know some people do. I mean, look at fucking Mark Millar. That dude just tries to storyboard his movies out.
Yeah,
in a 6-issue book.
Those guys that did Cowboys versus whatever, aliens, whatever. That whole that was an entire. Did you read about that?
No, I didn't know anything about it. But I mean, it just sound. You're talking about the Harrison Ford movie, right? Cowboys versus aliens. Wasn't Harrison Ford in that?
No, you're thinking of Indiana Jones.
No, dude,
he's not in that movie, dude. You just made that up in your head. You're
dude, no, I'm looking
at the aliens in Indiana Jones.
No, check it out,
you
dude.
Want to bet
Cowboys
money on this
and aliens.
Right now?
Yeah, I will bet money right now because I've got it right in front of me. Check it out. Cowboys and Aliens is a 2011 American science fiction Western film directed by Jon Favreau and starring Daniel Craig, Harrison Ford, and Olivia Wilde.
Harrison Ford. What is his role in it? I never saw him in anything, any of the advertising.
He is Colonel Woodrow Dollarhide, and I think he was in every trailer.
Oh man, I guess his like old melty face just kind of like is so just generic to me now. I can't even tell him apart from anyone else. Okay.
Oh right.
No, I mean that whole thing was the
tell
creators.
That story though, because I didn't hear about it.
The creators of that comic basically ordered a bunch of stuff from these comic shops, basically padding the numbers, right, for the sales, so that they can then take those sales numbers to the studios and say, look, this IP is worth money because people are buying it. And then they
were like ordering stuff through Diamond through shops?
Yeah, they basically found a loophole within the industry to get an adaptation, because that was their main goal, was getting a movie deal. They didn't give a shit about the comic. It was mostly just getting a movie deal.
Right.
And I mean, if anything, props to that. That's a fucking...
I was going to say, that's a great hustle.
That is an awesome hustle, yeah.
How can we get a loophole to make ourselves really rich, and then we could just, make comics that we like after that?
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. No, I mean, again, the main thing, I want to clarify this point, because I think this might be getting lost here. And also listeners might be, might confuse my point here. I have zero issue with creators getting money for an IP check, right? If they're able to sell off their IP to a studio or some company that wants to, adapt it into a movie or a TV show or make action figures or whatever, that's awesome. Great job. But to look at that and say that's the pinnacle of being a comic creator?
Oh, right. Yeah. No, I feel you.
That you're not making comics then. What you're basically saying is that the greatest achievement any comic person can get is not doing comics. That's basically what you're saying, is do anything but comics, and that's how you get successful.
Well, and I think the overall theme of this show, that the thread that runs through it, because it gets brought up, is the only way you can make money in comics now is by not doing comics.
Right. But it doesn't help when you have people that are allegedly big names repeating that bullshit. Like, I don't, and again, that's only just specific people that are really only doing Marvel and DC stuff.
Right.
So they're not speaking on behalf of comic creators in general, or for the most part, the majority of comic creators and writers and artists and whatever. But I feel like that is like very, very indicative of the overall attitude that seems to be carried in sort of pop culture and the mainstream, and sort of like kind of the overall understanding of the medium is that this is just funny books for kids, and movies and TV shows, that's serious adult stuff.
Right. Right.
And it's fucking bullshit.
I agree with that. And you're right. It shouldn't be the pinnacle of comics. And being a cartoonist in this industry, just knowing that the only way you're going to get money is if a studio dangles a check in front of you to adapt your work. Because yeah, book sales would be nice. But I mean, in indie comics, I know a prominent, I don't know them, but I've talked online with a prominent cartoonist about being published by, fuck it, I'll say it, Fantagraphics. And
yeah.
You get a $1,000 to $3,000 like advance check, $1 to $3,000. Like, fuck that. That's like working a day job. And if you're full-time cartooning, that's not going to last long. And then they were saying that their royalty checks would come in, 2 to 4 times a year, and just be for like, you'd be lucky if it was for $1,000. And this cartoonist is someone that's won awards and you would think that they would be making way more money than they do. And the only way that they're going to get money is if Netflix probably options their book. It's a really sad industry, like, because in independent comics, I guess you can go Image because, they can get you into every shop in America. But I feel like as an independent cartoonist, like, you want to be published. You don't want to get your stuff's not going to get published by Marvel or DC, maybe Image. But even now, I feel like they have a formula. Like, I feel like a lot of the Image books that come out now almost feel like they're trying to get optioned by a TV studio or a movie. But I feel like Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly are like the two respectable publishers. And when I say that, I just mean I feel like it's a pretty widespread thing that most people would, think that you've made it in independent cartooning if you were published by one of those two companies. That's not even the case. You don't even make money doing that. It's, you got to fucking sell your book from Fantagraphics to fucking Netflix. And it's, yeah, I mean, you're right. That shouldn't be the pinnacle of our career. We should be focused on making the books. And it'd be a really nice world if those books sold enough to where it wouldn't matter if, you had a movie or a film based on your work.
Yeah, and I think, like, if we were using the same language that I see being used about comic adaptations, the same way we talk about, say, fiction literature, like, that shit would not fucking fly. People would call you out on that. Right.
Well,
so,
and
like, I mean, to say that, oh, wow, this fucking Deadly Class TV show is such a huge win for fucking indie comics because now we're going to get all these new readerships. Not true. And it's a huge
Deadly
win.
Class is going to sell some trades in Barnes and Noble. That's all that's going to come out of that.
Right. And guess what? That shit is going to last for maybe a few months. Maybe.
Right.
And the one major fucking thing, too, is that these creators and these artists and these like people in the industry that peddle this idea are also like, well, look, they did a 5% increase in sales across the board. And you're like, 5% of what? Because you're looking at a title that sold what, like 2,000 to 5,000 copies across, like, nationwide. So what is 5% of that then? It's fucking pennies. That's nothing.
Right.
And that, to you, that is like a huge win. Like, how fucking low is this bar?
Well, I'm sure it's not the win isn't the book sale royalty check. The win is the fucking network check. That's the win.
No, but they're not even framing it that way. They're not even talking about it in that way. They're not saying it's a huge win because now I can afford healthcare. That I can understand. But to say, oh, this is going to do fucking great for indie comics. No, it's not. There's no correlation whatsoever to fucking comic book adaptations and sales in terms of, like, longevity.
Actually, just to let the listeners in, there was a tweet that came out from an author. And what exactly was the gist of the tweet? No, the tweet that brought the idea for this whole conversation on the show. It was a tweet. It was Rick Remender. Who repeats this fucking horse shit all the time. And it was something along the lines of, like, in 5 years, the direct market will be creator-owned comics. Like, the majority would be, I haven't read it in a couple days, so I forget exactly what it said. But this is kind of what spawned this all, because the tweet was kind of shade in a way, but, well, I took it that way because it did feel like, kind of what you were saying, like, oh, this is the greatest moment of my career. But the greatest moment of your career, if you're in comics, should be a comic. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's like icing on the cake. Yeah. I'm not going to turn down any producer or anything like that. But what I love doing is making comics. I went to film school. If I wanted to make a fucking TV show, I'd be trying to work at a movie studio right now. But I want to make fucking comics, So anything that comes from the comics is great. Right. But for you to be in comics and only work on comics that you feel that you're just trying to get option for a script, I think that's bullshit.
Right. So to give you some perspective, Deadly Class for the year 2017, sold roughly about 9 to 10,000 copies per issue. Per issue. No. But think about this. That's per issue across the board in all 50 states, right? 10,000 copies. Okay. What's 5% of 10,000?
Mm-hmm.
That's 500. That's
Right.
their big win.
What?
That's what proves that indie comics are going to replace corporate-owned comics, is that they sold 500 more copies. Wow. How can you look at that and just not fucking laugh?
And, just to put it, in perspective along the big two, I remember reading an article years ago, because this is when Scott Snyder was still writing Batman and they were still doing the New 52 over at DC. Batman was DC's highest selling book, and across the nation, it was only moving 250 to 300,000 copies monthly, which, don't get me wrong, I would love a fucking comic of mine to move that much. But when you're thinking about like how big of an enterprise and a franchise Batman is, and to think that in all of America, across all 50 states, on a good month, they're selling 300,000 copies, that's kind of horrible, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's like,
is.
if that's honestly like, for most people are just like, oh yeah, Batman's selling millions and millions. No, it doesn't even crack 500,000. And that's like the best you can get in this business. It's
no, definitely. I mean, how many copies of Gone Girl were sold?
Countless.
Right? And you compare that number to like the last Batman trade. You can't even compare the two. And I'm not even talking about like young adult or all ages Batman. I'm talking about the stuff that is like purposefully made and designed by the editorial team at DC to be super edgy and adult and geared towards that audience. And they can't even fucking do that.
Like showing Batman's dick.
And they can't even do that. They can't even push or sell or distribute this fucking comic the right way and come even close to some margin of a low percentage of the sales for a book like that. So it's just a low bar.
It's completely apples and oranges.
It's just a low fucking bar.
Well, and there was that shift. Well, and we've given up since like 08 or 09, I feel like, because there was that shift where, like, I guess you would call these guys like the fucking Mount Rushmore of like independent cartooning. It was like when all the big guys like Klaus and Chris Ware and Art Spiegelman, when they all went to like Pantheon. Do you remember that? Everybody got like a deal with Pantheon in like 08, 09.
Yeah.
And they had those really nice books, and like you could find like like David Boring, and you could find fucking Jimmy Corrigan, and you could get Asterios Polyp at Barnes and Noble. And, they were lumped right there with the Batman and, Superman books and everything. But there was like a focus for a while, I feel like, to get comics taken seriously. But that's just kind of fallen to the wayside in the last 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, with small press, there is no air of like, this is how you get successful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I think everybody in small press can kind of agree that if you can get a paycheck getting your comic adapted into a TV show or a movie, that's awesome. And it was definitely something that was prevalent in the 90s too. I mean, fuck, you can, the fact that you could turn on your television, watch MTV and see something based off a Charles Burns book, to me in 2019 is mind-blowing.
What happened? I don't recall. I like Charles Burns, but what was that?
MTV used to have a show called Liquid Television. And it was
the cartoon show, like the anthology type show.
It was a collection of different, like, kind of like stretched out segments that would be a combination of either like live shows, like live skits, or traditional animation or stop motion and stuff like that. It was kind of really ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. Okay. And one of the bits was Dog Boy, which is a Charles Burns book. And it's like straight, like pretty close to the source material in terms of how they tried to make that translate. I would go back, if you haven't watched it yet, please go check it out. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna check that out.
The idea of seeing that same approach being applied to something like, say, Black Hole or something like that, that would be so fucking sick. I'd be way ready for that.
Black Hole is so good.
Yeah.
Well, and what's really crazy is, granted, you're talking about Charles Burns, who, arguably one of the god, one of those, like, so, and even like Dan Clowes, I've seen him like online, he like did like a Coke can. Like there was a series of Coke cans that he designed, and it's just like, I don't know if that was just the 90s and everything was like wacky and edgy, so like also that was pre-internet, so they had money to just throw at people. But
he also had a movie deal because of Ghost World.
Oh, right. And then they made that Art School Confidential movie, which I still haven't seen.
Yep.
But
I haven't seen it either. I read the short.
Right. Yeah. But and that would be cool. Like if you want to say like, at least it's fucking drawing. Like if Clouds came out in an interview was like, the highlight of my career was doing 6 Diet Coke cans.
No,
like,
he absolutely.
At least he drew that.
Right. No. I think, if you are a comic artist or a creator or whatever, and you're doing stuff like that, and like it's cool to get paid and also kind of like, stretch your creative muscles to do something else a little bit. Right. Because he's not just writing and drawing at that point. He's also kind of like doing input with like art design and stuff like that. And that's like really cool and fun. And I would love to do shit like that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. I would love to do that. But to fucking sit there and say, oh man, got to go to my premiere of my fucking TV show deal, the adaptation of my comic, and man, this is what it means to be a comic artist, guys. This is if you're a comic writer, this is how you know you made it. It's like, no. That just means you're a spec writer. Yeah. That's all that's all that fucking means, guy. What are you talking about?
Right.
Like if you want, just be honest with yourself. Just say you want to go into movies, you just want to do you just want to do scripting and script revision and spec writing. That's fine. And you'll make a very pretty penny doing that. Like people make 40, 50, 60K per script doing just that. So I understand why people want to get into that industry, but don't fucking lie through your teeth about how this is like a big win for comics and how this is the pinnacle of being a comic person. That's like so disingenuous, right? Like, I don't know. I just find that very irritating and sends a very fucked up message to people that are maybe breaking into comics and want to actually do it, and then hear this fucking jack off say this stuff, and you're just like, oh, then what am I fucking doing then? I should just go be a comic, or I should just go be a script writer or a spec writer, or be an intern at some fucking studio or whatever. Like that just seems like a more honest way if you want to just make that kind of money. And I get why you'd want to do that, but don't dress it up and fucking lie about it. It's just weird.
What is the pinnacle of making comics to you? Like, what would be the ultimate goal? What would you be the happiest with as at the end of your career? If it was ideally if you could dictate exactly how your career went, what would that top moment be to you?
I think it would be one of those instances where it's kind of the same way how how talk shows will have celebrity guests all the time.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, if they're like a top tier director, that's when you know they're fucking serious and you'll see them on that show. So something along those lines. I mean, it doesn't have to be a talk show. I would never want to be on a fucking talk show. But in terms of like looking at someone and saying, oh, this person, I know this person because they make comics, right?
Yeah.
Same way as when you look at, if you look at a director, like, if you look at someone like David Lynch, it's like, that guy is a filmmaker. He is a director, right? So it's just like the same way. It's like taking the medium a little more seriously and giving it some air of legitimacy, and and not just this like completely laughable kid stuff, which it can be. It doesn't all have to be super serious, because it's like anything, any medium, can have all these different facets to it, right? But to just look at it in this sort of like very two-dimensional way, the way we have kind of been sold on how it should be interpreted, it's super fucking harmful to it, both as an industry and as an art form, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, kind of going back to what I was saying, like to me, like I guess you could get an award, like a serious award, and that would be like a pinnacle, because at least that's recognition from your work, from your peers. And that would be cool. But yeah, just being known for what you do, I think, just kind of piggybacking off your answer, I think that is the ultimate end all be all in this racket.
Yeah, and being able to just do that thing and be known for it. And then also just have that freedom of being like, oh, I can just work on this specific thing because that's what I'm known for. And that's what people expect in terms of like, the type of stuff I'm going to produce. But also being able to support myself financially on it. I mean, that would be the biggest win. That's the pinnacle.
That's the thing. Making a living off of it and not having to go to work every day.
And not just having to depend on IP sales.
Right.
IP,
And I think, like, you
IP
know,
should be
even...
the fucking IP should be the cherry on top, not the entire fucking sundae.
Right. Yeah, the icing on the cake kind of.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's like a great attitude to have about it, you know, because I think, like, you know, I'm not even asking for fucking $100,000 a year. That would be great. But if I could even just make what I make now at my day job, because I live semi-comfortably, you know, I've still got fucking bills, but I mean, like, I'm more financial well off than if I could make what I make now off of comics, like, I would be so happy because I didn't have to go to work every day. And yeah, I mean, I guess that would be making it.
Definitely.
And that would be the best thing, is just to be able to provide for yourself off of this passion, hobby, art form that we take, you know, so seriously.
And I can say, if I could also, if it came down to it and I could make a living on just my illustrations, I guess that would be a close second, you know, because at least I'm still kind of using a visual art form to communicate these ideas. You know, it's like I'm still able to kind of do that. And that's kind of like what Chris Ware can do, you know, I mean, doing all these illustrations for the New Yorker and whatnot. And
I was gonna say, we always bring that up, that like the money's working for the New Yorker, you know.
Well,
and
yeah,
that's
I mean,
kinda...
the money, to be honest, if you're a comic artist, the money is in illustration. You're gonna get paid way more on a single image than you will on like a 40 to 80 page book that you spent years working on.
Exactly. Yep.
The fact that you know, illustrators can make more than a comic artist, to me, is also like a very glaring example of how fucked the comic business is. So I don't know. And you always hear the same excuses, right? Like, oh, the readership's not there. You know, like, you know, we're struggling as a business. We're not making enough sales. Which is like, oh, that's right. I forgot about that business course where they tell you that if you just don't do your job, it's fine. if you don't sell your product, then hey, you know, that's not on you, right? That's the consumer's problem. And I forgot about that. Like, no one would use that excuse for any other fucking thing. It's just so I'm at a loss, right? Right. At a certain point, you just have to fucking throw your hands in the air. It's like, well, fuck it, you know. So
yeah, I've already done that, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why we made this podcast. Yeah. This podcast is just every once a week we get together and just throw our hands in the air and just fucking shout into the void. Fuck it.
Yeah. But, exactly. Yeah. So thanks for riding with us through that, Gutter Gang. We really appreciate that. Yeah. This is basically a very, very affordable form of healthcare for us at this point. Yeah, this is therapy. I mean, it's, you know, kind of going back to, you know, at least you could go to a drink and draw and talk about this shit. I know you're not, but this is all I got, man. Gutter Gang forever. Yeah, and with that, we're going to go ahead and close it out. Stay tuned for next week's episode. We're actually going to have a guest on, a buddy of mine, Katrina. She is also, well, no, she's not from Lakeland. She's actually from Utah, and is friends of Dylan, Drug Dogs. So they were friends back in the day. So, but she's going to be on. She is currently a manager for a fairly sized comic chain, and that's going to kind of carry us into the topic of retail. What it's like on the front lines, you know, what's selling, what's not, what kind of customers she has to deal with, what that interaction process is like, some possible horror stories. But yeah, I think it would be good to kind of get the perspective of somebody who's really there and seeing it firsthand every day. And hopefully she'll provide us with maybe some more positive news than I can offer or have offered on this fucking show. And feel free to drop us an email again, gutterboyspodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to dunk on us, because we're going to dunk right on you anyway. So yeah, check us out for next week's episode. Till then, stay fucking gutter.